Hare Krishna. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. I was in Delhi today. It's a lot nicer here than in Delhi. You play Jayarada Madhava, Gurudev style.
Just one moment.
He was in the Brahman effulgence, and he met the personal servants of the Lord of Vaikuntha. First he met Lord Shiva. You all know it's a long story that takes billions of years of Gopkumar performing sadhana as instructed by his Guru Maharaj. So he was in, I guess we should say that in this world, he went up to Brahmaloka, which is the top planet in the material world. And there he heard that there was a place called the abode of liberation, with the Brahman. And although he was acting in capacity as Lord Brahma, he didn't know what liberation was. So he became curious. And he was thinking how to go there. And so he chanted his mantra with the sankalpa to go to the abode of liberation. And he went to the abode of liberation, meaning he went into the light of the effulgent body of the Lord. He said it was very astounding. He said it was just like intense brightness shining everywhere. But he was chanting. And he was chanting with so much determination that he could look beyond the light in the Brahman and he could see the form of Krishna the light was emanating from. Gopkumar was always interested in seeing the form of the Lord because he wanted to serve the form of the Lord, but he specifically wanted to serve the form of Gopal in Vrindavan. And he was very amazed, and we can only fathom how profound his chanting of the name was, that he could see through the light of Brahman and he could see the form of the Lord the light was coming from. And think of that with an aspiration that our chanting should become so fixed and so determined. And he said sometimes he got a feeling like he wanted to merge into the light. But every time he started feeling some temptation like that, he said, I remembered the lotus-eyed Lord of the universe, Jagannath, in Puri. He had a very active, loving relationship with Lord Jagannath. And he said, every time I thought about merging, Lord Jagannath, he pulled me back and he saved me. Then consequently, he saw this grand, effulgent personality. He said just the umbrella that was held over the head of this person was more opulent than anything he'd ever seen in the material world. And that person was Lord Shiva. And despite the fact that he had been Brahma and he was in the Brahman so advanced, he didn't know who Shiva was. So then Shiva's associates started explaining to him the glories of Lord Shiva. And he wanted Shiva's mercy in the same way that we should desire to have the mercy of Lord Shiva. One of the last verses of the Bhagavatam says, Vaishnava Anamyata Shambhu. The entire verse, it says, just like the Ganga is the greatest of rivers, and Shiva is the greatest Vaishnav, in the same way, this Bhagavad Purana is the greatest of all the Puranas. So he was thinking, I want to get the mercy of this person, but because he was a Vaishnav, he was very shy, and he was afraid to approach. But then Lord Shiva very mercifully called him, and he set the boy. The boy was next to him, and he started stroking the head of the boy, just giving the boy so much mercy. And he said, I live in Vaikuntha, which is beyond the Brahman. I have a planet where I live there. And me and my associates, we just chant the name of Govinda eternally on my planet. We just always have Sankirtan on my planet. He said, and now I'm traveling into the material world to visit my friend Kuvera. Myself and Parvati ji and my associates. He said, I wish that I could always stay there. He said, but even I'm not qualified to stay there all the time. And then he told Gopkumar something very phenomenal. He said, if you live in this world and if you perform all the prescribed duties of Varnashram Dharma perfectly for 100 lifetimes, then you can become a Brahma. And then if you perform all the duties of Brahma perfectly for 100 lifetimes, you can become a Shiva. He said, and still, despite all that qualification, we can't stay there all the time. He said, but you should hope to go there. You should really hope to go there. You have qualification to go there because you chant the name of the Lord in the way that your spiritual master instructed you to. And you were also born at Govardhan. So the boy was just feeling the flood of Lord Shiva's mercy, and then he heard music, and Lord Shiva started getting a little crazy hearing the music. And Lord Shiva got up and he started dancing very exuberantly. And Parvati and all of his associates, they began clapping their hands in order to inspire Shiva to dance more. And then the boy was saying, "Where's that music coming from?" And then he looked up and he saw the Vaikuntha people, the associates of the Lord. And they were going from Vaikuntha down into the material world, and they were going there to perform Sankirtan, to deliver the people in the material world. So they began speaking to Gopkumar, and they had a long discussion, and it's one of the greatest discussions of the Brihad Bhagavatamritam. I think His Holiness Niranjan Swami Maharaj started speaking on that section at the beginning of lockdown, and he spoke on that section for many, many months consecutively. Just talking about that wonderful conversation that they had. And that conversation was really like a Nama Mahatmyam, or glorification of the holy name of the Lord, and really explaining that the greatest process of spiritual realization is chanting God's name. And then there's the point that they brought up to clear up a doubt of Gopkumar. Because Gopkumar, on his journey, before he got to Brahmaloka, he was in Tapaloka. In Tapaloka, all the people that live over there are people like the four Kumaras, meaning they're self-realized saints. And they're practically as omniscient as Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And they're always in ecstasy by their meditation on the Lord. And when he went there, he said, "Where's the Lord that you worship?" Because in every planet he had seen the Lord. He said, "Where's the Lord?" And they said, "Oh, he doesn't live here. He lives in Buloka." And they said, "Well, how do you see him? How do you worship him? How do you love him?" And they said, "Well, we meditate in our hearts." And Gopkumar was not interested in meditation. He wasn't interested in just going inside and focusing the mind, because he wanted to meet Gopal. He wanted to kiss Gopal. He wanted to wrap his arms around Gopal. So he didn't like that process, and he felt that maybe he was being offensive because these people were so advanced, but he just didn't like what they were doing. So the Vaikuntha people, they started explaining this point, and they said that some people, they speak about meditation, and some people speak about Sankirtan. And they said, our conclusion is the most powerful process, Sankirtan. And then they said, but try to understand that meditation is good, because when meditation is good, one can focus one's mind and one's senses. But by Sankirtan, you meet the Lord. And then they reconciled it, and they said, actually, the truth is this, that meditation and Sankirtan are the same. Because when you really chant the holy name with really focused attention, consistently, without offense, for some time, then Krishna just shows himself to you. And then the Sankirtan becomes sweeter, and the meditation becomes more intense. So they're very complementary processes. And we're quite small in this process of chanting and meditating and hoping and aspiring. I mean, goodness, who knows? We could have been doing this for many, many lifetimes, and by all those lifetimes, we've come to this evening, sitting in the courtyard in Raman Reti to chant Hare Krishna. But we should hope, and we should think that way. Like I told Akinshana, the reason I'm mentioning this is because I told Akinshana this melody that he sang was such a sweet, beautiful, dancing type melody. And I was sitting and I was like praying, and that in the eye of my mind I could see how Radhe Shyam would dance to a melody like that. How Radharani would be spinning, and what Krishna, what he would do to enhance the dancing of Radharani and bring joy to all the other girls in the forest of Vrindavan. It's a great hope. And we read about it, we hear about it from our spiritual masters, and we hear about it from our acharyas. And, you know, sometimes it's like when you're driving your car, your battery may go down, and then another car will come and they'll put a cable on their battery, and they'll put a cable on your battery, and it will sort of like spark, you know, the battery. And then when the motor gets running, then it generates some energy. And we should always be in a position where in our Krishna consciousness we want to spark that remembrance of Krishna. Not be shy to do that. Not to think that it's a bad thing to do. Not to think that if we have spiritual feelings, that's a bad thing. But to hope for that. It's like tonight when I was coming back from Delhi, I sent Premanjali a message, and I said, "You please sing tonight." I said, "Please sing something that will make the heart feel separation from Krishna." I said, take each word of the mantra and dip it in the bhav of separation. So we should hope and aspire that way. Because we know for sure that Rupa Goswami and Srila Prabhupada, they've told us that if we want to go to Goloka Bindavan, we have to learn to follow in the footsteps of the people who live in Goloka Bindavan. So we should think about them, or think of Rupa Goswami's, statement in the Upadeshamritam when he says, "Tan nama rupa charitari sukirtananu smrito kramena rasana manasi niyoja tishtan braje tad anuragi jananugami kalam nayet akilam iti upadesaram." He says that the essence of all the instructions of bhakti, so we should so nicely and purely chant the holy names of the Lord 24 hours a day. Tan nama rupa charitari. Nama, the name; rupa, the form; charitari, the activities; sukirtananu. Very nicely chant without offense. Smrito kramena rasana manasi niyoja. And if we do that, so nicely our minds will become absorbed in Krishna. Mind and senses just perfectly wrapped up in Krishna. And that's the perfection of yoga. Mind and senses absorbed in Krishna, that's perfection. And then Tishtan Braje Tad Anuragi Jananugami. Then always live in Braja and follow in the footsteps of one of the eternal associates of the Lord. And we can see from at least our acharyas, I mean, we have Nimbarkas, and we have Ballab, and we have Ramanuja, and we have all the different Madhva, different Sampradayas, and they all have a different formula, and they have a different path that they're following in order to get to Krishna. But, our spiritual masters, our line, our acharyas, they're always saying, Rupa Raghunatha Pade Hoibe Akuti. When will I follow in the footsteps of Rupa and Raghunath? When will I follow, like, the life of Rupa Goswami? When will I follow the life and teachings of Raghunath Das Goswami? And then if we take that, we can say, yes, we want to follow them, and nicely chanting and speaking and following Vaishnava Sadachara and all these different things. But then if we take it to the internal position of Krishna consciousness, we can think, yes, that is Rupa Manjari. She was most confidential maidservant of Sri Radha in that world, and she became the most confidential maidservant of Lord Chaitanya in this world. Raghunath Das Goswami is Rati Manjari, confidential maidservant, close, very close bosom friend of Rupa Manjari, confidential servant of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So we have the external way, we have the internal way of thinking also. And Rupa Goswami has told us, and all of our acharyas have told us, and they've written, it's not bad. Don't be afraid. Read, think, and then in hope. Have great hope. And then perhaps one day when we sing Hare Krishna, we will see, the way that Radhe Shyam are dancing in Kirtan. It was like whenever I would go on Harinam over the years, whenever I go on Harinam, I always look beyond into the sky. And I have one disciple I shared this with. Maybe I've shared it with others, but I have one disciple named Anapaini that I've shared this with. Whenever we do like Harinam, or in a Harinam type situation, I always point into the sky. Because ever since I was a young devotee going on Harinam, I always had this really profound prayer that if we did it nicely, one day we'd look into the sky and the Panchatattva would appear and dance with us. It's like we're dwarves wanting to catch the moon. But nonetheless, it gives us hope. Sometimes we may feel like, gosh, this process that we're doing it so long, and it's like we're beating the head on the wall, hoping that Krishna is going to show us something. But we should know for certain that Krishna promises that he will. But he says that Jejatamam prapajante tang sataiva bijamyaham. I will reciprocate with you in however you approach me. So we should really hope for that life in Vrindavan. We should make everything that we're doing now is preparing us to go for that life in Vrindavan. But we should also make some efforts to try to cultivate that life within in Vrindavan. Okay, thank you very much. Hare Krishna.